Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with the special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Lisa, protomartyr, half sister. So that's what we're going to be checking out today. No context on this one, going in without any expectations. I've never even heard of this band before, or artist, I suppose. I don't know if it's a single person or a group. Let's just dive straight in and see what Protomartyr is bringing to the table today. I'm going to assume, due to that squeal, that it actually continues from the previous track. A little ominous. Interesting to have that pickup note. That really quick note before the downbeat. Ooh.
Outside of Darlington in 1963, I'm certain the mornings a spectre appeared in a well-appointed back garden. Its voice was still
the full expansion this time. That's really catchy. That little guitar lick coming in after the big moment. Yeah, that works so well.
In northern Michigan, there was an incident in winter. A horse was hit by lightning, began to speak in a foreign language. When it was finally understood, he repeated humans are no good. So they shot him behind the shed and stuffed him. He's now on the
A different build-up this time. Okay, I was expecting us to get back to that full sounds. Okay, that's neat. It's interesting too to find a section like this with a chord progression to it after having so many sections of a static chord. Always variation, changing up the sonic palette. interesting note choices for that melody.
She's trying to reach
Yeah, that note.
trying to reach you.
Very interesting choices given what's going on underneath it. Because our chord progression implied by the bass and the guitar has a resolution to it. It's 3 chords. We have a home chord, a built-in leading and tension chord, and then our resolution. But when he brings his notes in the melody, it just creates a lot of directional confusion. The resolution that the instruments were providing no longer feels as resolute because the perceived chord in the middle there, based on how the vocal melody is intertangling with that compound leading and tension chord, it turns it into something different that doesn't feel as naturally resolved when we head to that final chord. It's yeah, that's an interesting idea. I don't know how to take it yet. Maybe it'll come to me by the end of the video, maybe it won't. But I am perplexed by it. It's certainly beyond my grasp after a first listen. Alright, this song does a couple of things really well that I enjoy. First of all, the build up. We saw it in the first verse, we saw it in the second verse, we saw it in the bridge. It's all over the place. Start small, build up into. I thought this was really effective the first time around too, because the song comes in pretty big, ignoring the 15-second intro building into the first main section. The song kicks off at full energy. Then we bring it down to a single clean electric sound on a guitar. Then we ramp it up to 1 distorted guitar and then 2 distorted guitars. And it's really cool to feel this sound evolve and move into this very big atmosphere. We do this again though. We bring the song down to a single clean electric, but from here we don't build back up that same way. We don't even build back up into the same thing. In fact, every single one of these buildups goes somewhere different, eventually even bringing in an entirely new little guitar lick to be built off of, which is why the end of the song feels so different from the beginning. We're looking at an entirely different foundational idea, although the compositional idea of building things up from a foundation is consistent throughout. And so there's a ton of contrast in this track, in that none of the sections ever feel like we've entered into a full loop. We might have the perception of, hey, I remember this, but it goes in a very different direction this time around. Or, hey, this is sort of familiar, but it takes us somewhere we hadn't seen before. I really enjoy that. Beyond that, though, there's also the sheer contrast that comes from showcasing one sound in a variety of different timbres. This is something we saw towards the end a lot with that key melody, bum ba dum ba dum ba dum bum. That melody is played on the bass, it's played on the clean electric, it's played on a fuzzier clean electric, it's played on a very big wall of sound electric. It shows up all over the place. And we constantly get to hear it in new contexts. We might have a different accompanying guitar bit. We might have a different accompanying drum part. We might have a different accompanying vocal part to it. And then, like I said, it also exists within 4 sounds itself across, well, the guitar in 3 different tones and the bass. And so we might hear that lick not just with a different context around it, but from a different sound entirely. It keeps a rather consistent element to the song where I can always listen to a part and say, oh, this harkens back to this, or this is what we've heard at this point. Keeping it all feeling extremely cohesive, as if it's one unified idea slowly evolving over time. But it also allows the song to have that contrast, to have that diversity of sounds, to allow it to not feel like it stagnates over the 5-minute runtime. And I personally don't think that it does. Most of the ideas are just long enough to the point where I've begun to hope something else comes along, and then it does. It doesn't overstay its welcome, but it also doesn't feel like it's that the song's moving too quickly either. And pacing is going to be a personal thing. Some people may find that this is too fast and they'd rather stay in the sections longer. Other people may think that it moves too slowly and they wish they would pick the pace up. For me personally, though, with my experience on a first listen, I think everything was very perfectly paced, towing that line, almost overstaying its welcome, just a hair bit, but working very well for me. And like I said, I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that many of these ideas are constantly being recontextualized, revisited in different sounds, stuff like that, allowing it to always have something fresh for my ear to latch onto and to check out. Now we have to talk about atmosphere, emotion, because right when the song kicked off, I was like, dang, this is ominous. We got this guitar feedback tone coming in, makes me think that it's a direct movement from the previous track. But we quickly move from that to something that feels ominous, dangerous, even, but in a seductive way. Because as much of the guitars are playing notes that make me feel a little off putted, makes me feel uneasy. There we go. It's also done in this syncopated rhythm. Da-dum, 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 da-dum. That it's like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And then the full band comes in, and this is super groovy. You got those heavy accents on the downbeats, but you also have those pickup notes, the ones that take us into the downbeat. And it gives it this really smooth groove. And so, yeah, the music is a little unsettling, but dude, you feel that groove? Like, yeah, let's get in on this. Let's start moving our bodies. And so, like I said, it's a bit of a seductive ominousness that I really enjoy about it. And it defines a lot of this track for me. And that's sort of wanting to listen to more, but kind of being a little put off by it. Like, nah, I don't know, man. I don't know if I should be here. But then another part of the music, it's like it's like the smoke in the old cartoons from like Tom and Jerry when it would like turn into a hand and like they would smell like the pie or whatever and it would like pull them over and lift them off the ground. Yeah, that's what the drum beat does for me. It keeps sucking me in even when the music is like, you probably shouldn't be here, dude. But the thing is too, is that this changes over time as well. Some of this ominous element is actually removed, stripped out to be added back in later. This is usually when we run it down to the clean electric guitar, which sort of still has the elements, just not in the right context. The guitar line itself isn't unsettling. It isn't until we get those really big guitar tones, the big meaty bassiness, we get the harmonic contextualization to it, that really shows us that something here is a little off. But the guitar alone, that's fine. Drops your defenses a little bit. You start to get used to that melody, so when everything else comes around it, you don't notice it. It was fine before. Why wouldn't it be fine now? All of this is brought to a head about a minute and a half before the ending of the song when we shift gears completely and begin to look at something that, at least to me, feels a bit more safer musically. It's not happy, but I also don't have any negative emotion tied to it. It has a beginning, a tension chord, and then a resolution. It isn't ominous overarchingly, it just has a little bit of tension because we need that to direct us to get that resolution feel. It sort of just is for me. I don't really have much of an emotion tied to it. That is until the vocal line comes in, and this is what I was talking about earlier. It completely upends this section to where it's not ominous anymore, and it isn't safe, it's just confusing. What's going on here? My experience with this song was, I don't know if I should be here. But that groove's kind of cool, to a point of not even really noticing the ominous element, to being so far into the song that I'm questioning, how did I get here? What's going on? I don't want to be here anymore. And it's sort of that losing yourself to the moment and then just going with the flow until you can't recognize where you are anymore. That's what this song did for me. And I find that to be a very wild ride, because I completely forgot about the ominousness element of it a few minutes in. It was just a good groove. I was checking out what the dude was saying. And then by the end, I was just like, wait a second. I don't understand the harmonic qualities here. We were fine a second ago. What happened? Why is the vocalist singing it this way? And yeah, it's just very, very bewildering to be on this roller coaster ride with this song. So that was my journey through it. Before we hit the lyrics, though, I do want to talk about production, which I really enjoy, and a little bit of contrast in here as well. There's a fine balance between the quieter sections that we have and the very massive wall of sound sections that we have. Both are produced in slightly different ways because they are emphasizing space in two wildly different ways. One, of course, is emphasizing the space, and the other is filling that space. I think they did a really great job at making sure that both shine through. It's not an easy thing to do, to create something that still feels synergistic, where it all still feels like it's part of the same song, but they're going for two vastly different atmospheres on it. But aside from that, everything is still balanced really well. And I love the way that the vocals exist in their own little world, for the most part. Pitch wise, there really isn't anything else in the same range that the vocalist is in. This allows the vocals to have their own space. It allows them to be very clearly heard and produced. There's a clarity to it. But what I find interesting is that this doesn't translate into being in the spotlight, especially during that opening section when we had the really big wall of sound stuff. The instruments were caving in around the vocals, pushing them down into the mix. I could still make out what was being said, particularly, I think, because of pitch. There's nothing else in that realm. It makes it very easy to still hear the vocalist. But it still muddied it up just enough to feel that the vocals were drowning within the song itself. I don't know what that represents. It is something I picked out rather quickly, though, and it only stands out to me even more as we get to the end of the song. Speaking of, let's dive into some lyrics. See what's going on there and see if we can't tie in any of the things that I felt during this experience with what they're going on about lyrically. Well, I don't think my reads are particularly supported by the text, but we'll go through this and maybe somebody will see a connection. I don't. Y'all can let me know what's up in the comments section. Verse 1 speaks about Jesus and Pilate, and when Jesus was jailed for being a false prophet. It's done so in a bit of a modern language, though. It says, in ancient Palestine, a Roman middle manager dresses down a radical. I have a backlog of so-called prophets. You are of a multitude. The offender said, I witness truth. Perplexed and filled with pique, the jailer replied, truth. What is it? So we have a concept of truth, that Jesus is a prophet, not one of the so-called prophets, at least as far as the Christian religion is concerned. And that the jailer has seen so many people saying that they're a prophet that he doesn't believe anybody is one anymore. You say you are, whatever. I don't believe it anymore. I can't. There's been too many people saying it. So we have the concept of truth here. Verse 2 speaks about outside of Darlington, 1963, a specter was seen on somebody's back garden. A voice was heard, and the sun came up, and physicists, and mediums had come out to figure out what this person had seen in their backyard, and the man realized it was a living relative, had a house 1,000 miles away. So the truth was there wasn't a ghost. I'm a little lost on that one. Verse 3, though, deals with northern Michigan being an incident in winter where a horse was hit by lightning and began speaking in foreign language, eventually repeating humans are no good, and was then shot and stuffed and put on display for kids to always do their best. That was the lesson, to do your best always. I find this interesting because the chorus then says, truth is a colicking horse that serves no purpose. Truth is a babbling prisoner you'd rather not kill if they confess. Truth is the half-sister that will not be forgotten. And the outro repeatedly says she is trying to reach you. So if she, being the half-sister, is a metaphor for truth, then the concept is that truth always wants to be found, but people just don't want to acknowledge it. But I don't... Okay, so here's the thing. That kind of makes sense with verse 1. If you take the Christian religion as truth, then Jesus says, I am the Son of God. I'm the real prophet. And the jailer says, yeah, I see too many people like you. They refuse to see the truth. Verse 3 is about a horse speaking in foreign languages and eventually says humans are no good. And of course, we don't want to hear that. So we shoot the horse so we don't have to hear this phrase anymore because obviously humans are good. We do good things all the time. We don't want to face that truth. Here's where things get a bit odd though. Where verse 1, if you believe it, is a true event, and verse 2 is also a true event, verse 3 is entirely made up. Joe Casey, the lead singer, has said in an interview that it is not a real incident, unlike the other two, and it is something that he made up with his brain, which I think is a fantastic way to phrase that. So then what is the truth if 2 out of the 3 things in this song are truthful and 1 out of the 3 is not? How do you discern what is true? I find it really interesting that he decides to put a lie in a song about truth that utilizes up until that point a consistent set of true events, especially when the rule of threes typically states that the third item will be in a collection tied to the first 2. This is why so often when you watch apocalyptic or science fiction films or whatever, they'll be like, yeah, he's a great composer, like Bach, Stravinsky, and Shobelob. And like, you just have to understand that Shobelob is a modern genius in their time, in their world or fiction or whatever. Because by the rule of threes, you have 2 other people to relate them to. And so by the rule of threes, I assumed all 3 of these were real events. And then 1 wasn't. And it shakes my trust in the storytelling, which is a song about people who don't view the truth directly and will shy away from it or avoid it because it's not comfortable. And I find that to be hilarious. There is a really strong irony to that, and I'm curious if this was intentional or not. To me, it undermines the narrative. It undermines the moral and message of the song in a very bizarre way. People might want to avoid the truth, but also if you're purposefully misguiding them, it does make people less receptive to the truth, much like our jailer in the first story. I've heard this too many times. I don't believe it anymore. My experiences with the truth have been altered. No, my relationship with the truth has been altered by my experience. And so if there's a chance I could be lied to, I'm going to be skeptical about any sort of truth. You see what I'm getting at here? The song says that the truth wants to be understood, but it's also purposefully creating skepticism, which undermines the idea that people should just be receptive of the truth because, honestly, they might be getting lied to. I don't know. It's a very bizarre idea. And I just, if someone has any insight on this, please let me know. I'm very confused by this. And this sort of confusion is what I felt during the song, too. I was reading these lyrics. I took everything at face value. I came to my own conclusion about it, and then I hit the annotations up, and I get to the annotation for the third verse, and I read the interview, and Joe's like, "Nope, that horse story wasn't real," and I was like, "But, but why?" I mean, the story itself supports the message, but it also just happens to be a song about truthfulness that you're putting a fiction element to, which, I mean, again, depending on where your stance is on religion, the first stanza about Jesus is also fiction. So maybe I'm just looking too far into that, but at that point, I am also of the mind where 2/3 of the situations are fictional. So I don't find much truth in in the song to begin with. I don't know. It's an interesting idea, and I'm curious what Joe has to say about this, especially him being the lyricist to it. I mean, the message is that truth wants to be found, but bro, you're making me very skeptical about believing anything. In fact, I almost feel like I need to go look up this event of the Spectre in Darlington because I vaguely remember it. But is it real, or did I just read about something similar on the internet sometime and now I'm relating it to this and saying, oh yeah, that was a true event, and maybe I haven't heard about this, and all three of these are fake stories, in which case, wow. I mean, that just completely upends everything. It's the fact that I'm skeptical about any of it now. But I suppose on the other hand, that does make me want to find the truth. And if the truth is searching for me, we're already halfway there. It's a lot to think about. Those are my thoughts. Protomartyr's half sister. Where do you sit on this? How do you interpret any of this? What's your take on it? Let me know down in the comment section. You can also add your own perspectives and opinions on it, or anything you'd like to agree or disagree with me about my interpretation of the music or lyrics. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll continue on with this week's theme of retro video game music, checking out something from Donkey Kong Country, I believe. We'll also do another special selection tomorrow. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.